One thing that's really cool with the JavaScript API is this built-in feature that you can use to do property watching. Basically, instead of having to rely on a series of events, which may or may not exist for what you're interested in, you can just watch for certain properties to change and some Boolean actions, like whether something is true or false, and when that interaction changes, and then you can do something with that. So most of the, there's still events in the API, interactive events, definitely things like, click events, maybe when something changes, there's changes events, and various parts of the API still do have events, but you don't need to rely on them. You don't need to tell the developers, hey, I need a specific event for when the scale changes or the extent changes or something. You can just watch for those properties to change and then do something with it. And then you can watch for some other properties to change. So maybe you're interested in when, we'll look at right now, when the scale changes, but I only need to know when I do a zoom, I just need to know the final scale change. I don't need to know all the intermediate scale changes when I do a zoom, for example. All right, so let's see how you can do something like that. There is this nice utility in the API called watch utils that you can use to do certain things, like watch for when a property is true once, so it only fires one time and never again. Let's see how that might work. So I'm going to do a little helper here, a property called false, right? So I have a watching property false. So if I'm currently watched for something, I'll set it to true, and if I'm done watching that property, I'll set it to false. It's just a nice little quick way to get around it. There might be a more elegant way to do this, but this is definitely going to work. So maybe I want to watch for the scale change. All right. So I want to do a view.watch, and every module in the API, every instance that you create that has a class that extends accessor will have this watch method on it, so you can do something really cool like this. So you can watch for this property scale to change. So in view.scale is something different. And then you have a callback you can use. Now in this callback, I'll just log out the scale. So you're going to get back the new property value, the old property value, and then I believe it's the target. Double check the SDK on that one, but yeah, it's something like that you get back. So I'm really only interested in what the new value is. So let's log out the scale here. Let me go ahead and clear this. You notice here that right away I got a scale, and that's because I create the view here, but then the view is initialized with a map that's going to have a base map, the streets base map. And then once the view initializes with that base map, it goes from having no scale to the scale of the base map, right? It's kind of the very first scale gets assigned. So that's why this change happened here. If I did this after the view is loaded, so let's say view.when, and when is how you can know when the view is ready to actually be used. And this is probably a smarter way of doing this. You'll see in a lot of demos I do when I show people how to build apps with the API and stuff like that. I typically do most of the action after the view is loaded. So you notice I don't have the new scale getting loaded here because I waited for the view to get loaded, and now I'm going to go ahead and do something with it. So now if I start zooming in, you see I get the new scale, but I also get all of the interactive scales. So let me do a quick one here. Yeah, and you see all those intermediate scales show up in between. So let me go ahead and do something like this here. So now what I can do is I can watch for a scale change. And let's just say if watching is true, just return. I don't want to do anything, right? Because I'm currently in the middle of watching something. Let's go ahead and set watching equal to true. And now what I'm going to do, let me get rid of this here. I'll copy that. Use it for later. I'm going to use this when true once. So when true once, and you can pass it the target, which would be the view. And then I'm interested in when the stationary property is true, just one time. That means that the view is not moving, right? It's not being zoomed in on, it's not being panned or anything like that. It's completely stationary and just static at that point. So when that fires, that's actually going to return a promise. So I'll do a .then here. I'll go ahead and pass my callback into the promise here. Now I can go ahead and log out my scale, and I'll set watching to false. All right. So let me go ahead and clear this up. Now if I go ahead and zoom into a small location, You see, I only got the final scale back from when the zoom was finished, when the view became stationary at that point. That's how you can do certain things like this. And like I said, check out the SDK. This watch method is available on almost all the classes in the API, as well as be able to use this watch utils helper module that we have to do some really cool things, like when something is false once, when it's true once, when it's undefined once, maybe when defined. I think there's a lot of them in there. Check it out. Trust me, it's really cool stuff to play with.